Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Saturday, May 11, 2024, coming to you live from Florida Media in Rockville Center. Got a big end of season, put a bow on it edition of Hockey Night in New York coming up here in the afternoon on a fine Saturday here in May. Ethan Sears of New York Post is going to be joining us. My name is Sean Cuthbert. With me as always is Mr. Stefen Rosner. Stefen, how are you?
The vibes are great. It feels like summer. A little windy, but it's perfect kind of wind with the heat. And just driving down, sunrise, the beautiful Sunrise Highway. It was great. It felt great.
Buddy, temperatures up and down. One day it's hot, one day it's chilly. What's going on here?
Sounds like a microcosm of the Islanders season.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Roller coaster ride. You're absolutely right. Well, before we dive in, I want to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with the fantastic Blue Line Deli and Bagel. Satisfy your hunger at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com. Also proud to be sponsored by Main Street Board Game Cafe. Check them out at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. And also check them out at mainstboardgamecafe.com. And also proud to be sponsored by Razor and Kniff Attorneys at Law. Check them out at razorandkniff.com, RAISERANDKENNIFF.com for a free consultation. And if you're hanging out with us in the chat and you want to get some questions in for Questions Brewing, just write Questions Brewing and your question, and we'll get to it later. So with the pleasantries out of the way, Stefen Rosner, once again, the Islanders season has come to a close. The roller coaster ride has ended. 5 games against the Carolina Hurricanes. We never got a chance to talk about Game 5, so maybe we can just recap that real quick and then just talk about the season at large and, of course, pivot to what the hell is going to happen this summer.
Yeah, the Islanders, again, fallen 5 games. It was a closer series than probably the series losing 4-1 would show, but again, you go back to that last game, and it was like Game 2. You tie the game, you allowed 2 goals in, 8-9 seconds? Again?
Yeah. In a very different manner, but yes.
That's that. And you look back at how many times the Islanders failed to punch back. They allowed 2 punches before getting that first punch in. It was an issue early on in the year with the leads that they blew. It was an issue late in the year before they went on that 8-0-1 streak. And then in the playoffs, you can't mentally fall apart after you allow a goal. In the playoffs, because that 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 8-9 seconds, that could be series defining. And for the Islanders in 2 of these games, it was.
Yes, but again, the way it unfolded in Game 5 was a little different. I mean, you're talking, I would say they were much more responsible for how it went down in Game 2. In Game 5, I give them credit. They could have mailed it in and been like, all right, I see the golf course on the horizon here. And give them credit. They fought back. Brock Nelson, Casey Cizikas get those goals to tie the game just before the third period. They go in. I feel like they had a decent start.
Yeah.
And then just under 5 minutes into the third period, you obviously have the bad bounce that skips over Pajot's stick, lands right on the Hurricanes, and then it goes in the net. And then after that, I mean, The next one was it just wasn't meant to be, right? That was the sign to tell us this isn't the Islanders' year. You get the strangest of strange caroms off the corner. Varlamov is obviously going out to field the puck. It pops out in front, and he can't do anything about it. Ends up in the net, and they just don't have an answer for it after that. Now, if you want to say the Islanders are at fault for the way those goals went, I'm not so sure about that. They tried to battle back afterwards, but again, it just wasn't the cards. Time ran out in the season, and here we are. It's over, and now we're left in a situation where we get the press conference with Patrick Roy and Lou Lamoriello. Lou lets us know that they're both not going anywhere. They're sticking around, and now we can kind of start talking about not only that, but maybe just looking back. I mean, I said it on Twitter leading up to this show, how this, in my viewing of this team since I started, going back many years, I don't think I've seen a stranger season on the ice. Off the ice is a completely different story, but as far as what's transpired, from the players on the ice, to the ups and downs, the penalty kill and the power play flip-flopping from last season to this season, the inability to hold on to leads after it used to be an absolute, lights out sort of thing for them. Just a bizarre occurrence after bizarre occurrence. And every time you thought they were looking good, they follow up with something that puts them in the tank, and then it goes the other way. And they find a way to scratch and claw once again into the playoffs. It doesn't last long, but I think it just raises a lot of question marks about who this team is on the ice, because we saw two different coaches, and we saw some habits go away, some maintain, and some positive things as well. So maybe you can just assess what you saw from those 82 games and then the 5+ afterwards.
Yeah, Eric Hornick definitely had a workout this year in terms of pulling up stats, right? So stick taps to Eric. But
right.
I think the sad part about this core that could be broken up, I know Lou was asked about if he believes this core isn't good enough to take them to the next level, and he said, I can't answer that, which is a no, because if there was an answer, it's a simple yes. I think what's sad about this core is that even when Trotz was here, then Lambert, then Waugh, they never played a consistent regular season to the point where, who knows if they don't have to claw their way into the playoffs, how much fresher they are. Can they rest guys later in the year? Is the confidence there? Like, we have no idea how things were going. Again, regular season success doesn't equal playoff success, but this group aged during the year so much, I feel like they're not an old group, but how much wear and tear they had to put on their body because X, Y, and Z didn't happen early in the year. Just this group never had a dominant, maybe one under Trotz, a dominant regular season where you said, you know what, this group was good enough in the regular season. Maybe now we can go and add a little bit more at the deadline, or we don't need to add X, Y, and Z. Like, this group's good enough to get there. We just never got that. It was always just clawing. I think this year specifically, you had the injuries to the back end, which killed them, which shows how important defensive depth, NHL-ready defensive depth is. Again, Lou went out and made the moves, which credit to him. Riley Bortuzzo paid off tremendously. Riley, probably one of the better waiver pickups of the year if you're looking at the NHL.
Sure, yeah.
But again, the injuries to those guys and the inconsistency you just talked about. This year was so weird because the potential, we talked last summer, the potential going in was, sure, they're quote-unquote running it back, but this team should have a better regular season with the piece they had in place, how they ended last season. Healthy Matthew Barzal, Ilya Sorokin another year. This team should have been better in the regular season. You look at all the blown leads halfway through the year, you could have looked and said, if the Islanders don't blow 75% of these leads, they're neck and neck with the Rangers.
How about 50?
Yeah, I didn't
give us half.
They're neck and neck with the Rangers this entire year, just the way it was going. And then, again, so I think the issue with this year is that the potential for them to have a really good regular season was there. It was there. They had, for 2/3 of every game, it was there to be not elite, because the Islanders will never be considered an elite team no matter who they add. But competing with the elite teams all year, if they finish off third periods, they're one of the better teams in the East this year. And that, I think, is the sucky part going into it, is that they never played to their level during the regular season. And then in the playoffs, again, the grind it took to get to the playoffs, they just feel like they never got to their game enough in the playoffs.
Well, I think maybe it just has to be acknowledged that this isn't a 60-minute team. Last year, they came out well early.
Yep.
Right. Sorry, no, they came out slow early.
Last year,
and then they caught up. This year, they came out well, and they allowed teams to come back in. Now, we're always going to sit here and try to figure out, is it a mental thing? Is it a physical thing? Is it an age thing? And I'm sure all of those things play a factor. But the bottom line is, now we've seen an 82-game season where, whether it's mental or not or whatever the case, they have proven incapable of playing as close to a 60-minute game as possible. Now, most teams don't play 60-minute games. Most teams, you're happy to play 45, 50, and you happen to just come out on top by the time the game is over, right? Like, ebbs and flows, momentum. This is hockey. Yeah. This is hockey. That's how the game goes, right? Look at the playoff games. If anybody's been watching the playoffs, you've seen huge momentum swings in some of these games where somebody looks like they're going to blow the doors off somebody, and then all of a sudden a team comes storming back. And it's good teams too. So it doesn't just happen to the Islanders. It happens throughout the league. But I think now we've seen, and even under a smaller sample size under Patrick Waugh, that some patchwork does need to be done on this roster. And it's obviously on Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Waugh to figure that out. And we can sit here for the next hour or so, throwing our, hat into the ring and seeing what they might need to do. But we know it's imperfect. And you mentioned before how, they could be and they should be a better regular season team, and there is some merit in being a better regular season team. You've quoted Mark Barzal more than once saying how he'd like to get in before the end of the season, so maybe they can take the foot off the gas a little bit and maybe get some guys to rest or whatever it is, and so they can kind of more comfortably land in the playoffs instead of just being desperate to climb in there, right?
Maybe a higher seed also.
No, for sure. But what we've also learned, and I'm going to point right right, at our blue and white neighbors in the Great White North in Toronto, this is a team that has a great regular season every year. And what do we see? First round and out, except for what?
Year.
Yeah, except for last year, right? But my point is that there has to be a balance between being a good regular season team, but also a team that can perform in the playoffs. And we've seen that Toronto is the exact opposite of what the Islanders are in that regard, where the Islanders have a rough time having a good regular season, but they have in past years been proven to be built for the playoffs. And maybe with another piece or two, they could have gotten through a first round against the Carolina Hurricanes. So, yes, definitely get some more points during the regular season. Throw some of those loser points from that bracket into the winning bracket. But at the end of the day, I think they still need to hang on to some portion of their identity so that they can still be a tough out in the playoffs and kind of stick with that reputation of being a hardworking, win-by-committee team.
And I think that's a hard balance. I think you're seeing a lot of teams that don't know what to pay more attention to. You talk about the Leafs, and they're in a lot of trouble cap-wise because of all the no-movement clauses they have. But they're a top-heavy team, and the same thing with the Edmonton Oilers. I think Toronto and Edmonton are very similar. So top-heavy that all their money goes there, where they lack the defense, the depth, and the goaltending. Whereas, in theory, the Islanders have the goaltending, and they should, with Waugh a year, should be much better defensively. I'm not going to say they're going to be elite like Trotz, but they have that. Their issue is having a true top six, which is the opposite, which is why their identity has to be the grinding, because they don't have the offensive forces to compete. But as we saw this year, they swept Toronto. They've played well against the top teams in the league. That's the concerning part. Is I remember early in the year where they lost the game to Boston, and we had a show right after. They played 2 great periods against a really good Bruins team where they could have won that game.
Right.
And so I think a lot of those games where they'll never be considered elite, the Islanders have the identity to beat those teams, just closing it out, which goes back to age, goes back to mental strength, which Waugh was brought in to help the mental side of this team. Because that's what Lou believes, like, get them to believe, which is mental, but also get them to buy in. And I think to the extent you saw a lot of guys do it, the problem is you need a full team to do it, to win consistently in the NHL. If not everyone's buying in, you're going to have a very hard time finding that consistent balance of seeing guys in those big moments give that 110%. Whether, like, the difference between 95 and 100 is huge at the NHL level, whether it's a back check, whether it's, it's beating out an icing, which you saw in the playoffs. So I think for the Islanders, I don't think they're as far off. I don't think they're also one piece away from winning the Cup. They're kind of in the middle where you don't really want to be.
Right.
That being said, which is why this summer is so important, because this could put the team closer to a Stanley Cup or a couple of steps back. And it depends which way Lou and Waugh, which was the biggest takeaway from his press, was that they're going to work together, which people overlooked completely as just words, but Lou has never said that. So I think there's merit there. But this is a huge offseason for how this Islanders organization is going to push forward or take a couple of steps back to eventually push forward a couple of years down the road.
No question about it. And the great news is that Ethan Sears of New York Post is going to join us to talk about
Let's do it.
So, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast and streaming providers. I'm going to take a quick break, and then Ethan Sears will be joining us.
Hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the Cup. God damn it. Heat was lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line Combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Attention all artists, storytellers, and creators of all kinds. It's time to make your content stand out above the rest, and Floored Media is the place to make your visions become a reality. Maybe you want to elevate your podcast and add some video, or turn that novel you wrote into an audiobook. Or maybe you just need the right space to produce your daily vlog. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, Floored Media has the professional facilities, exceptional staff, and intimate atmosphere to breathe life into your creative passions at every step of the process.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on, right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. The train is always rolling on here at Hockey Night in New York. And joining us right now from the New York Post is Mr. Ethan Sears. Ethan, great to have you back, man. How you been?
I've been good. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Absolutely. So we're closing the book on this New York Islanders season, the topsy-turvy, up and down roller coaster ride that it was. And I guess let's just start by, now that the 82 games are over, the 5 games against the Canes are over, you got just a general assessment of how this season went for the Islanders, and then we can kind of pivot to where we go from here.
Yeah, it was a really weird year, right?
Sure was.
I think that I think it was really, really taxing for the players in the room, not just obviously the coach being fired, but also just the number of close games, win and loss. I think the roller coaster nature of it was really hard. The way a lot of these individual games played out was really hard, including the playoffs. You have 5 pretty close games that could have gone either way, and they come out on the losing end of 4 of them. And, to me, it was really kind of probably the last straw for, we're going to stick with the group. And you got that sense on breakup day a little bit. And, there was a sort of sense, I guess, of everyone, at least players, saying, okay, we still believe in the group, but clearly everybody who doesn't has maybe won this argument. And, a sense of there really can't be more staving off of these changes. And some of that is just because contracts are ending. And some of it, I think, is because it's pretty hard to look at the big picture of the last 3 years and put together an argument that they should keep this the same.
Yeah, you mentioned the room, and I wanted to bring up Noah Dobson. Regardless of what he done on the ice, to me, he gave off this kind of, he was like the Zach Parise of this year in terms of always being around to talk with us after all these hard losses. Just what was your take on really Dobson's maturity and just becoming a leader, I guess, in the media with us? Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, really impressive to see him grow in that area. He was always available after every hard loss. And the way he stepped up on the ice as well, especially that first half of the season with how many guys were hurt, with the minutes he was playing. And even later in the year when, his play probably tailed off a little bit. And, I would guess that the minutes load had something to do with that. He never used it as an excuse. And was just always there, always accountable, and really impressive to see from a 24-year-old in a veteran room that in theory he shouldn't necessarily have to be one of the guys who's out there every day, and he was, so good on him for that.
No doubt. And just to keep with kind of the big guns on this team here and how they've kind of grown with this team, Matt Barzal becoming more of a leader, obviously has a season where we're seeing point totals that we haven't seen since his rookie year. Obviously, Lane Lambert opened things up a little bit, and we saw the production continue under Patrick Waugh. Maybe you can just talk about the growth of Matt Barzal, not only on the ice, but maybe just as a locker room presence, as maybe we are starting to see a leadership shift with this team, especially barring what moves we might see this summer.
Yeah, obviously the move to the wing worked pretty well for Barzal, and you saw that in his production. Leadership-wise, the thing that kind of sticks with me is I don't remember exactly when this was. It might have been around when Patrick Waugh came in, and we were asking him about Pat. Patrick said that he really sees you stepping up as a leader or something like that, and he kind of said, I'm a little tired of this narrative, and I am what I am in the room. And so I don't know if I see Matt Barzal as somebody who is going to have a letter or is going to be like the quote unquote the leader. And I think that's okay. I think that doesn't mean he can't lead by example or step up and say something when he feels the need. But I'm a little wary of that narrative just because he's pushed back on it. But I will use kind of this question as a segue into, I've heard a lot of people talk about kind of, the Islanders need to add a scorer, right? And we've heard that the last few off seasons, I feel like. And I don't really know if I agree. And I'm curious what your guys' takes on this are, but like I look at this team and they had 330 goal scorers. Matt Barzal had 80 points. Noah Dobson had 70 points. And that was all really with a power play that wasn't very good for the last half of the season. So I don't know if I really see the big picture issue with this roster being high end scoring so much as like the depth scoring. I think the bottom six has to improve. I think that if you can get an upgrade on defense, you should. I don't know whether that's really a possibility with their cap situation. But I don't know that the sort of big issue, like the big thing that the Islanders are missing that would put them on level with the Rangers or Carolina or whoever is like another 30 goal. Not that it would hurt. Obviously, you don't say,
right.
If Jake Gensel calls you and says he wants to come to the island, of course you do it. But I don't know if I view that as kind of the issue with this team, just because of the production that they got from guys like Barzal this year and the fact that it didn't really change the record or the way the season ended.
Yeah. Ethan, I think that's a good point. Because, I've been looking at the crop of free agents coming up, and you can also look at the trade market, of course, too. And everybody knows that there's going to be a cap issue for this team, and they're going to have to figure out a way to navigate it right. And, maybe that's some hoops we'll try to jump through later. But at the very least, though, when you name those guys, the guys that put up goals, I mean, you look at the left wing on the first two lines, right? And sure, like you said, it'd be great to add a guy like Gensel, but I look down the free agent list, and there's a lot of guys that are looking to be available this summer, at least for now. A lot of things can change between now and July 1st. But it looks like there's a lot of guys you can plug in there that you can feel a lot better going to battle when you have one of those guys there instead of a Hudson Fasching or even right now a Simon Holmstrom, just to kind of, add more depth to those lines and add guys who are more expected to put up anywhere between 35 and 50 points, right? Where you're not relying on a Casey Cizikas next to, and I love Casey Cizikas, but you're not relying on a guy like him next to Barzal and Horvat, where you can plug a guy in maybe at somewhere around a $4 or $5 million salary, and the lineup looks a lot better. So I think there's some merit to what you said, and if the Islanders, if they can find a way to fit a Gensel in there, that'd be wonderful. But I think if you want to keep things more on the realistic end of things, you plug in some of these guys who, if you go down the list, and I think we're going to go down some names with you a little later, and also we will as well, just some guys that you might be able to plug in there that makes this team look a lot better. And I think you can say something similar for the back end as well.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, Ethan, I agree with you. I think if they could go and get another defenseman to compete with Pelech for minutes, I think, look at this past year. One, you don't know what Pelech's health is going to be going forward. He is aging, but to make your defense deeper, you saw how many issues they had when guys were out. Even when guys were in, the defense struggled. So, Ethan, for me, I think the focus should be on getting another left side defenseman for sure.
There you go.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And like you alluded to, Sean, I mean, there is going to be a cap issue, and you don't know what's going to be possible, and they'll have more space than they've had in previous summers, but they also have to worry about signing some guys to some extensions, and everybody is going to have, the sort of $4 million or so dollars that the cap is going to go up. So that's almost like, in this environment, that sort of $4 million is almost like zero, right? Because everybody has it.
Right.
Like, so, everybody's starting out on that same number. So, it might look like they have more, but in reality, I think it's sort of hard to judge exactly what 6 million translates to here versus like a normal summer where, like, if they had 6 million in space last summer, you would have said, wow, they really, can do something with this.
Right. And to just continue off of that thought, I don't, like, on paper, it doesn't look good right now as far as the cap numbers, but I don't think it's dire straits, because we've seen this team in a similar predicament in the past, and when the cap was flat, right? The Andrew Ladds of the world, and even Josh Bailey. And Lou's found a way, albeit having to give up some assets, but he's found a way to unload those salaries. And I think they're in a position where, you know, and whether he ends up being the guy or not, where I think JG Pageau is a name that keeps coming up between Stefen and I, but I think for good reason, is that, you know, even though he has proven an asset in some respects as far as the PK as well, that's debatable, I guess, these days, but the face-off circle and all that. But if there's a way that they can shed that $5 million, then all of a sudden, you know, they're working with a few more bucks here where, like you said, they don't have to aim for the top of the list here. They can maybe go a little further down and still pick up a name or two that could certainly help this team and maybe not only improve their already strong 5-on-5, but I mean, most importantly, just get these special teams back to where they need to be.
Yeah, JG Pageau is a name, and I think Brock Nelson is a name as well, because, you know, that's somebody who's coming up on the last year of his contract, and, you know, just from an asset management standpoint, first of all, you have to think about, you know, okay, do you want to have him for another X years and be devoting cap dollars there when, you know, he's getting up there in age. Obviously he's produced very well since he's been 30, but, you know, that's a little bit of a gamble. And two, you know, you talk about wanting to change the room, wanting to change the culture, wanting to give whatever phraseology you want to use.
Sure.
Well, you know, obviously Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck are sort of the most obvious pieces who might not be back next year that maybe would accomplish that. But if you want to change the top six, and if you want to make a trade that is going to, you know, really bring something back, you know, we just mentioned a left side defenseman, you know, you can move $6 million and get a left side defenseman, right? At least in theory, if you're trading a Brock Nelson, you can try to use that to really improve your roster as opposed to just moving cap dollars out, or improve your farm system, you know, get a draft pick or two, maybe some version of both of the above. So that's something I think the Islanders are going to have to really, really think about this offseason, and, you know, possibly at the trade deadline too, depending on where they are. And obviously he's been a huge part of the room and a huge part of the team. He's a career Islander. He has, I think it's a 16-team no trade clause. So it's not easy on an emotional level. It's not easy on a practical level, but that's something that I think they probably have to really consider.
I want to play a game with you, Ethan. Are you ready? I'm going to say a name. You're going to tell me if he's on the team to start next year. Are you ready?
Oh, wow. That's like a game that's just designed to get people angry at me. Okay. Yeah,
that's the thought. If they're angry at you, they're less angry at me. And
Stefen loves trouble. So.
Yeah. All right. Brock Nelson, on the team next year to start or no?
I would say probably. I don't think it's 100%, but if you were betting, I think you would say yes.
JG Pageau.
Yeah, I think so.
Cal Clutterbuck.
I'm sorry?
Cal Clutterbuck.
No, I don't think so.
Matt Martin.
No.
Oliver Wahlstrom.
No.
Ruslan Ishakov.
Oh, that's a good one. Are you saying on the roster or in the organization?
In the organization. Let's say that.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
That was a
Why
confidence
not?
yes from Ethan Sears. Ryan Pulak.
Yeah, I do. I don't think that they could trade that contract even if they wanted to.
So I'm going to guess same answer for Adam Pelech.
Yeah.
Mike Riley.
That might be the closest one you've said yet. I will say yes, just because I think it's the conservative answer, and this team has tended towards conservatism. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me either way.
All right, well done. You did a very good job, Ethan. There you go. Ethan Sears, everybody.
Very nice, very nice. I just wanted to circle back to Brock Nelson for a second because I think that's a good discussion. Because you also mentioned that, you say, hey, maybe the Islanders don't need that much scoring because of all the 30 goal scorers that they had, but Brock Nelson was one of those 30 goal scorers. So if you do unload him, then I guess the question is, are you cutting off your nose to spite your face to, maybe get that left side defenseman or whomever it may be? And just it's a tough spot for Lou because you also talk about his age, right? And it's so hard to pin down when a player's expiration date is, right? You look at Josh Bailey, how he just fell off a cliff rapidly, right? Other guys, maybe you see their point totals go down every so often every year. And then you have some, mutants that just get better as they age,
Crosby.
right? Right. And they just keep putting up the points. And I don't know how a Patrick Waugh or a Lou Lamoriello are able to sit down and look at somebody like Brock Nelson and say, okay, he's only got 1 or 2 good years left, or he's looking good, he's staying healthy, he's got 3 more years, or how Lou Lamoriello has raved about Semyon Varlamov, obviously a different position here, but still playing strong in net. Always talks about how well he stays in shape and how he doesn't see him slowing down anytime soon. And then, of course, you look at another example like Anders Lee, who's probably not earning the $7 million per year that he once was. So I guess, when you toss Brock Nelson back into the fryer here, what do you think is the best move for them? Do you think he is the ideal guy to move because he can actually get you something back because his value is still good now? Or is he somebody you hang on to because you put a little faith into his production continuing and being, I guess, a somewhat integral part of this locker room?
Well, I mean, obviously that depends in part on, what exactly can you get for him? And that's not something that we really have the answer to, right? But just in a general sense, as well as he's played since turning 30, most guys are going to decline or start to decline around the age that he currently is.
Right.
And I think you saw not offensively, obviously his numbers were very good, but I think you saw times this year where defensively he maybe wasn't quite as engaged as he could have been. I think that especially probably the second half of the year, that was noticeable to me. And I would be thinking about that. I would be, I guess, a little worried there. And also just in the sense of you need a big shakeup to this room. Like, my lean would be towards at least testing the market for it, and seeing, and who knows, maybe if you can't get something that you think is good value for Brock Nelson, like, look, he's a very good player. There's no reason to think he is suddenly going to completely fall off a cliff next year and score 10 goals and tank his value by the trade deadline, right? Like, even if he's declining, you still expect whatever 20 to 25 goals from him. And being a guy who plays on your power play. But my lean would be towards trying to build a team that is geared around Barzal, Dodson, Romanov, Sorokin, Horvat, and trying to set those guys up best to win probably more 2 years down the line than next year. And to my mind, you're probably not re-signing Brock Nelson if that's the goal. And if you're not re-signing him, then moving him makes more sense. And if it means being a little bit worse next year, then it means being a little bit worse next year. I don't know that there's a straight upward trajectory from where they are now to being Stanley Cup contenders. you might have to go back a little bit before you go forward.
Okay, so you're looking at a little further down the road. Okay, fair point. And last question for me, and just to see if you have any names out there. Was there anybody that you saw maybe looking at the free agent list, or maybe somebody that they might be able to pluck off the trade market that the Islanders might want to keep their eye on, somebody who could be a good ad for them this summer?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little early to say, other than I guess just throwing darts at the board.
Right.
Stefen, I saw you wrote about Nikolai Ehlers, which I thought was interesting. That's a guy that they almost drafted and didn't. I've seen a lot of Carolina the last few weeks between the Islanders and the Rangers. So like Brady Shea has been a guy who's been in my head that I don't really think that they could actually afford him, but like that's been somebody who I've just sort of, every time I've seen him, I've thought, wow, the Islanders could really use somebody like that. But it's early. We'll see. We have to see how things develop. And, there's going to be a lot that changes between now and July 1st and between now and the draft. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Well, Ethan, always a pleasure having you on the show, man. Appreciate your time here today on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. Hope you enjoy the rest of it, and we'll be talking to you soon, all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, guys.
Absolutely. Take
Thanks,
care.
Ethan.
All right, that was Ethan Sears of the New York Post. Great stuff from him. You have anything to throw into that Brock Nelson discussion?
Well, I think it's what we talked about before when I was saying that they might have to take a step back to take a step forward.
Sure.
I think if you want to compete now and going forward, trading Brock Nelson, you're not getting back someone that equals a 30-plus goal scorer.
Right.
Maybe you bring back prospects. The problem is with this, again, I've said win now a lot, and everyone's saying, how could this team be in win now? It doesn't matter what we think about where they are. It matters where they think.
Exactly.
Now, Lou could say one thing and think the other, but I do. One, the day he says he doesn't believe in this roster is the day he gets fired and mutually part ways.
Right. They
Number
always
one.
have to say that.
So anyone that thinks that Lou was going to come out here or Wah was going to come out here and just rip certain players, it was
right.
It was never.
I
gonna
really
happen.
don't believe in these guys. I mean, you should see what's going on in there. Yeah, that's never going to happen.
Number two, if they truly believe they are still in win now mode, trading Brock Nelson, unless you're getting back a couple of ready Islanders like a defenseman and clearing the cap space to sign another 25 goal scorer, you hope that if Holmstrom's in the lineup, he takes an up step. I think Kyle McLean's good for 15, 20 goals. There's ways to get those 30 goals back. But if you're saying just trade Brock Nelson to get picks and prospects, those prospects are not helping you the next 2 to 3 years, and those picks are not helping you because they'll turn into prospects. So, like what he said, I don't think the scoring is an issue. The scoring is not an issue, but if you trade a 30-goal scorer and you don't get back anyone that's going to help you score goals next year, you're hurting yourself substantially in the production, which means you have no choice but to get better defensively and your goaltending bounce back, but you're not going to win any games.
Yeah, I don't think Brock is going anywhere this summer. I think the only way he's gone is if they fall on their faces and maybe they deal him at the deadline. I think he's at least an Islander until the trade deadline. Because like you were saying, I think this is Lou he's here to win. He is here to win, and yeah, I think future be damned. You talk about that 18th round pick that they're going to have. I don't think that's going to be picked by the New York Islanders.
I don't think so either. We'll talk about it, yeah.
But I do think that Brock Nelson's going to be part of this team. I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Palmieri is. And if one of those two guys were dealt this summer, I think it's for a defenseman, like you're talking about, maybe a Chychrun. They're involved in a deal there. But then they'd still have to probably look at the free agent market to try to supplement those lost goals because you got to find them somewhere. And there's already an argument to be made about the scoring depth that this team lacks already. Yeah. So if you pluck one of your 30 goal scorers and send them elsewhere, then you're going to have to find those goals, somewhere. You're not going to find it within the organization. Simon Holmstrom isn't scoring 30 goals next year. Hudson Fashion isn't scoring 30 goals next year.
They're not combining for 30 goals.
No, probably not. Pierre Engvall will be lucky to eclipse 15.
Yeah.
At least the trajectory he's on right now. So it's not going to come from within. The Oliver Wahlstrom experiment is over. He's probably heading elsewhere as well. So
welcome to San Jose.
Yeah, maybe Anaheim, somewhere in California, probably. So I think Nelson's a guy who, and Ethan was being conservative in his guesses, which I think was correct. Talking about Riley and talking about Nelson, because not so much because Lou prefers to be conservative, but I think what we all have to try to remember is, and Lou said this himself in the press conferences, it takes two to make these things happen.
Some
now,
fantasy hockey
whether it's a trade or whether it's a signing, you need the agent and the player to be on board when July 1st hits, and you have to hope that they don't agree with 31 other teams in the league, right? And then the same goes for dealing with other general managers, and it can come down to what the other team is looking for, what their cap situation looks like, what sort of assets they may or may not have. So, you can say until the cow comes home that they need to get X guy, Y guy, and Z guy, but there literally may not be an ability to do so. And Lou Lamoriello is going to work the phones. I'm sure he's going to be talking to everybody, and he probably already is. But, you have to dial back your expectations. So, yeah, I do think more players than not are going to be coming back from next year into coming back from this year into next year. And I think that, you look at if there's 3 holes that you can fill, it's left wing 1, left wing 2, and something on the defensive end. I think that's what you're looking at. And if they can do that to some capacity, I think that's great. If not, then we're probably looking at a very similar year to what we saw this past year.
And you say it takes 2 to tango. I don't know what adding a third person does, but in terms of contracts that we're going to talk about where players can be traded with 1 year left for extensions, is that, look at Horvat. That deal's only being made if the Islanders have a really strong feeling that Horvat's re-signing to an extension. So not only is the other team's GM, even for a trade, it's also that person's agent because they got to work out a deal. That deal does not get done if Horvat's not re-signing.
Yeah, and to Lou's credit, and a lot of people hate hearing that, but I mean, he swung and hit 3 times on guys like that where he kind of took a risk, right? Where he traded a big asset.
Yep.
He got Pajot, he got Palmieri, and he got Horvat, and they all stuck with the team. They all stayed. So, and that's a trend that we didn't see pre-Lou Lamoriello. Anyway, this isn't the Lou Lamoriello defense show, but But, again, credit where it's due. But let's take one more break. Before we do, let me tell all you guys about Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play. Food and drink, beer and wine, fun, and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game. From old favorites to the hottest new releases, we have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, Lorcana, and organized play communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game. And with that, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York. The best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Hey there, welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program. You are watching Hockey Night in the Afternoon here in New York. Hockey Afternoon in New York. Yeah, there we go. Here on twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and all your favorite podcast providers. So, Stefen, let's talk about some guys really quick in the system that may or may not have a chance with this team next year, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about Islanders free agents who may stay, who may go. You did a little bit with that with Ethan, but we'll chat a little bit amongst ourselves here.
Yeah, I think there's 3 players. First off, Lou, during his presser, said there's a lot of young guys pushing for more minutes. Now, reading into the room, you could talk about that being McLean getting more minutes, Simon Holmstrom, but I looked at it as organizationally, they might have a lower ranked prospect pool, which to me is a lot of BS with all that stuff. Prospects are merely prospects until they get their chance, whatever.
Okay.
But I have 3 guys that I think could fight for spots. Obviously, Ruslan Ishakov gets into game 82, gets into the playoff game where Martin can play. And we know what he is. He's a smaller guy that doesn't play like he's small, but He gets hit. Sometimes slow to get up. Can't really do all that stuff physically, but he's got wicked hands. We talked about it with Chris Terry when he joined the show. We've had guys talk about this. He's got nasty hands. He was a back-to-back All-Star in the AHL. He had 18 goals and 32 assists in 69 games. He is a pending RFA. There were rumors, which is why I asked Ethan about him.
Yeah.
That he could go back. He could go to the KHL if he doesn't get, whatever it is. That's all probably more of an agent trying to play games with Lou there.
We've seen it before.
But it sounded like Wild liked him. Now, I'm not saying that he's the answer to your left wing 1 or left wing 2, but he's probably a top 6 guy if that's what he's going to be at the NHL level. Maybe he fights for a spot in the top 6. My other guy I have is Alex Jeffries. Dominant career at Merrimack College. The question was he going to sign with the Islanders? He does sign. He plays only 12 games at Bridgeport, 4 goals, 3 assists, shot at will. You ask him what he likes to do, he goes, I like to shoot.
Nice, okay.
And he really surprised. They weren't BS goals. They were snipes. A lot of them were snipe shots and finding different lanes and things like that where I do think he could fight for a spot. Now, does he make it? I think they probably want to have him have a full year in Bridgeport, which I'm not going to say is an issue. But if he earns it during camp, and the Islanders, it's all depend on what they do this summer, right? But if the Islanders say, you know what, we're going to trade players, we're not going to bring guys like Cal Clutterbuck or Matt Martin back. We're going to move out a guy like Pajot. We're going to have a bottom 6 where young guys have a chance to play. Jeffries, why not? Can he play a third line or fourth line role? And I think the fourth line next year, there's no longer this. They were really good for a long time. But this fourth line having to be a bruiser in the NHL, that's not how NHL regular seasons play anymore. The teams that are elite in the regular season, maybe it doesn't pay off in the playoffs. But the elite regular season teams are the 4 lines that can produce. Again, you have guys that get hit for sure. And in the playoffs, you do need those kinds of lines. You need the guys like Stefen Nesson, guys like that, Matt Martin, Kyle Clutterbuck, have value in the playoffs, but you got to have regular seasons that are good to get to the playoffs. So you got to focus on that, where I think the Islanders need speed and youth in their lineup. Guys like Alex Jeffries probably doesn't need that much time getting seasoned in the AHL. You talk to the guy, McMahon, who covers Merrimack. He said out of the prospects he's seen come out of that program, Jeffries is the most NHL ready he's ever seen a prospect. Now, I don't know if that means a lot coming from Merrimack, not a huge school. It's a D1 school, obviously, but he's not producing like B or BC. But to hear him say that and you see him watch him play, confidence there. The third guy is Maggio. We've talked about a lot on this show. 16 goals, 11 assists, 61 games played this year. His first full season in Bridgeport. He doesn't get called up to be a black ace. I was actually kind of shocked with that. But he's got the hockey IQ. He's a grinder, but also has the talent to be a top 6 guy in the NHL. Middle 6 guy. Does he get a chance? So those are 3 guys that I think. And then you have 2 guys joining the organization this year. Isaiah George, who I can't say enough about, of 6 goals, 24 6, 68 games in his final year with the London Knights. They're in the OHL finals. They won game 1 on Thursday. He's a guy that has edge work, not Barzal level, but it's up there. And his ability to shut down in terms of odd man rushes, it was Pelech-esque when Pelech was in his prime. We watched it during training camp where he's going up against NHLers on 2-on-1s, and I forgot what the drill it was one day, just did not allow one pass to get through. Not once. He's one of those guys that, like Letty in the corners, can evade, but also with Pelech with quick stick work to chip pucks out. He's very smooth, has a lot to prove to get to be an NHLer, but he joins the organization. Also, defenseman Kallio Delius, who was hurt for a lot of this year, only played in 10 games over in Europe, but another guy who could walk the blue line really well, be a power play guy. Those are 2 young defensemen coming to the organization where I think George has a leg up just in terms of the tools that he has, but we talk about defense, the Islanders needing that. He finally, for the first time in a couple of years, have defensive prospects. Like Salo is a non-answer at this point in his career. Bolduc's probably the first guy up to get into an NHL starting job, but 2 young guys joining the organization that Islander fans should be excited about for sure.
No, yeah, we talk about how, dry the pipeline is. So it's good to hear that there are kids developing and that are coming over. It's encouraging to hear that too. I mean, even though they're probably not going to be ready next year or maybe even the year after, as we know, it takes a little while for defensemen to develop. But it's good to know that there's players like that in the system, especially guys that can move the puck quickly. Obviously, we know that that's been a big issue for this team. Losing guys like Taves and Letty over the years, and they kind of just haven't really recovered from that. Riley obviously helped in that regard a lot this season, which is why we may see him come back, but they definitely need somebody who can carry that puck or at least get the puck up towards the wingers, breaking out of the zone, because we just know how much of a problem that's been this season and something that's probably held them back from getting those extra points like we talked about. So that's promising, but nothing on the upper tier of prospects that are going to come and blow the doors off anybody next year.
First,
when you trade everybody,
again, not an issue, and we'll talk about it, but again, that's why Riley, if they don't get out and get like a guy like Brady Shea or Brett Pesce, whatever, those guys, Riley's kind of a perfect stopgap to get these guys. You sign Riley to a 2-year deal. then at least you have a year to see what these guys are in Bridgeport. Then think, wow, that guy might be ready to fight for a spot. You're not latched into a 5 or, which again, Riley was never going to get anyway, but a 5 or 6 long commitment. For example, a Scott Mayfield deal, I don't think you could judge him. We know that he had a fractured ankle the entire year, but there might come a time where, can Mayfield still play at the level of his contract? Are these guys ready? But you're locked into Mayfield. Where if it was a short-term deal, he was your stopgap to that next guy coming up. So it'll be interesting to see what the Islanders do, but they have their own free agents to deal with.
Yes.
UFA and RFAs. We did the game with Ethan. I'll play it with you, Sean. We could talk about it.
Okay,
There you have
sure.
the UFAs, Clutterbuck, Martin, Riley, Aho, Kuhlman, Pino, Salo, and Bortuzzo. Obviously, 2 of those guys in there or 3 of those guys in there. We're never going to... They're not
Yeah,
NHL
some of those
things.
guys I didn't bother to
So
put
we
on
can
my
even
own list.
skip that. Robin Salo's time has come to. I think he'll go
Yeah.
overseas probably. Kuhlman and Pino were depth signings last summer, which helped because Bridgeport had lost a couple. We talked about Chris Terry and Andy Andreev, but looking at Clutterbuck and Martin, it's been a long topic of conversation. I'll give my thoughts. You give yours after.
Sure, yeah.
I think Clutterbuck can come back, but if you have the resources to do it. For example, go get the guys you need to go get or think that you can go get. If the money's left over for a league minimum deal to bring Clutterbuck back, I think he has so much value in this room. He showed that when healthy, he could still be effective, especially if you're going to have young guys rotating in on that 4th line. Clutterbuck's a perfect guy to play with because you know that you're going to get this kind of game night in and night. For me, same thing with Martin. If you have the space at the end, sure, you don't need him back. Again, I don't think you need Clutterbuck back, but I think with the young guys you have, and the role that Martin played, perfect for the 4th line role. I just don't think the Islanders need that kind of 4th line going forward anymore. Great guy in the room. I think there's value in that. But you have limited resources and money. You got to spend it on certain areas that you need. And then Riley, I think Riley is a guy that fits what wants perfectly. I think at the end of the day, I would trade Bolduc and bring Riley back as your extra defenseman and let Aho walk. Anyway, whether Riley's in your starting lineup or not, I just think he bought in immediately to what in his game. That's a match made in heaven, and Riley's not going to cost you a lot either.
Yeah, I think with Riley, you still even like him as your potential 7th defenseman if Lou's able to go out and get somebody who deserves maybe some more minutes on the ice there.
Yeah.
And again, configuring and working the cap and stuff like that. But I think Riley's a guy that can be affordable and a guy that has worked with the system. It seems like Patrick Waugh likes him. He seems thrilled to be here. It sounds like he wants to stay. So he's a guy who I think there's a good chance of them hanging on to. When it comes to Clutterbuck and Martin, I think you made a lot of good points. And it's just weighing how much value these guys have in the room compared to how much they have left on the ice, right? And I think you bring up a good point where you certainly don't rush a decision on those guys, and I think because of how much they love the island, how much they have their families here, they don't want to leave. They don't want to go anywhere. And you don't necessarily want to use the words take advantage of that, but you can probably wait over the course of the summer. I'm sure Luke will keep a dialogue with these guys, but hey, listen, I'm still trying to figure things out with this, figure things out with that. If you can, give me some time, and I'll let you know kind of where we're going here. And you prioritize a bigger need because the truth is, this day and age, 24-25 season, the Islanders have bigger needs now than Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin. I think there's a much better chance for Clutterbuck to stick around. I think I agree with you that he can still prove serviceable on the ice. He doesn't have to be that regular 4th liner that he had been. I think he's a guy you can plug in when you need him, that sort of thing. Matt Martin you can do to a lesser degree. Again, I made a point online talking to somebody. I mentioned Ross Johnston, how they kept him forever. He barely touched the ice. And if you have a roster spot for him and he's making close to league minimum, and that league minimum isn't getting in the way of holding on to somebody else, then I don't really see much trouble with it. I don't see being upset with Matt Martin still being on the roster if they were able to fill the other gaps on the roster as well.
Or they just give it to younger guys. Like either way, that he's not coming back and being a staple in the lineup. What we talked about before is loyalty impedes progress, which is what Lou said, similar to what he said before he moved Josh Bailey. So it is interesting to have but they also have RFAs too. I want to quickly touch on if we have a second.
Yeah. And just to close my point, ultimately I think Clutterbuck is probably back, and I would say if one of them doesn't make it back, at least on the ice, is Matt Martin.
Yeah, Matt Martin, by the way, had an MRI last Saturday. He actually celebrated his birthday the other day. If you guys saw the picture of it.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody out. Everyone was shocked that Josh Bailey hangs out with them. Guys, they're all best friends. Whatever.
They didn't cut him off because he doesn't play with them anymore.
Imagine. Oh, you can't hang with us.
Sorry,
anymore.
bro.
He had MRI. He had 3 different injuries the entire year. We thought that maybe it was just the same injury. 3 different injuries. Said, I'm going to see what an MRI is. I don't think it'll impede my ability to be ready for training camp. He wants me back. Said the retirement was not his rumor that he started.
Right.
Which, again, is fair. That's how it works.
And they might get an offer somewhere else. And they might be like, hey, Lou, listen, I can't wait any longer. So-and-so wants me to, patrol the ice over there.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it. I want another 1.25 mil or 1 mil before I call it quits, whatever.
Yeah, and then at that point, if they have this, again, that it's all about prioritizing. That's it. By the way, we're going to do a drinking game. Every time I say again, you guys are going to get hammered. So get hammered on this Saturday, right?
Oh, good Lord.
Jeez. RFAs. I think we both know that the book if Wallstrom is back, it would be a very big shock. Something must have gone really, really right for Wallstrom.
I know. Does he have arbitration or does the team have arbitration?
It's the team. It's his arbitration, but the team, they all have to meet to do it. I don't think it matters.
But I thought there's certain cases where either the player gets the option to elect for it or the team does. And I think it's player elected. I think he gets to.
Regardless of who is elected it, I would be shocked if they even qualified him at all.
Right, they might just let him walk. Yeah,
he's
they
arbitration
probably will.
Eligible here.
What a shame. First rounder.
It stinks for Wallstrom. People blame him. He never got a chance. I think that's a BS take. He did get a chance. This is not rec league sports. This is the NHL. If your chance is 3 games and you don't make the most of 3 games and the other person comes back from injury or someone else over those 3 games plays better than you, that was your chance.
It's also hard to give a guy a chance when he's hurt.
Yeah. And
he had some unfortunate injuries.
And how many times have we seen in sports where one guy gets hurt? And I don't know if you watched the Tom Brady roast the other day, by the way, on Netflix.
I didn't. Okay.
But Bledsoe gets hurt, and then Tom Brady gets the chance.
How about a closer to home example? Thomas Hickey.
Yeah.
Thomas Hickey goes down, Taves comes up, and the guy never gives the job back. Right? And then Hickey's basically fighting to get back on the roster for, after that. So it happens. And that's essentially what happened with Wallstrom. And, look, I mean, Islander fans more than anyone know that first rounders aren't always going to pan out. It's unfortunate that they have a lot of recent examples to choose from. But Oliver Wallstrom is just one of those guys who it didn't work here. And maybe it can still work somewhere else. He sometimes is reclamation projects. Islanders had reclamation projects back in the 2010s. Michael Grabner, Thomas Hickey, a ton of those guys where it just doesn't work one place, it does somewhere else. And it looks like this is the opposite end of that, where Wallstrom probably isn't going to find success on the island and it's time to go somewhere else.
And the ironic part is now they finally have openings in the top 6 where they could give him the chance. But at this point, the potential, at some point, you got to live up to the potential.
Trotz gave him a chance. He ended up in the press box. Lambert gave him a chance, press box. Waugh gave him a chance, new system, clean slate. What did he give? Maybe 10 games? 9 games?
Yeah.
Didn't work out, sorry.
And Julien Gauthier paid the price hugely for that, going to Bridgeport and staying in Bridgeport the entire
there you go.
Rest of the year. I mean, you have Ishikov as an RFA that I think he'll be back. Kyle McLean, if he's not back, something really went wrong. And
McLean
is firing his dad.
Definitely coming back. Yeah. I can't see that not happening. And Ish, I think, remains in the system. I don't know if he's going to be part of the 23-man roster on day 1 in October, but I think he's still going to be part of the system.
Yeah, and that's a wrap on those. I mean, extensions as well, and I guarantee people are going to ask those questions. But Dobson, Nelson, Romanov, and Palmieri are up for extensions. Jeff Marek said the rumor around Dobson was 8x8. Anyone complaining about that? I don't know. You shouldn't be shocked at it.
Sounds good to me,
He's
actually.
Probably going to get that. Whether you like it or not, he tailed off. The turnover in the playoffs means you take $6 million off his annual value.
Right.
He's also 24 years old.
Right.
Still 24.
Yeah.
He's not getting older every day. He has a lot of time to grow. He had a practically a Norris-worthy season. So maybe the end there. He did have an injury that he came back from. 8x8 is it's probably gonna happen. People just have to get over it. Yeah, Brock Nelson, if you don't trade him, I think he would take a team-friendly deal. 6 years annually, 3-year deal maybe there. Romanov probably gets between $4 and $5 million, and then you have to decide if you're going to re-sign Palmieri. This all does not have to happen on July 1st. We could see it. We saw it last year happen at time. But I think the Islanders really have to take a hard look and prioritize. If they're going to trade Nelson, they're obviously not going to assign him to an extension. That's pathetic, and you don't have to do that now. Same thing with Palmieri. He had a great year, probably his best year by far his best year as an Islander, and definitely played to what Waugh wanted. But he's over 30. So I think Dobson and Romanov are your focuses for your extensions. If you're not going to sign Nelson, or Nelson says, listen, I don't want to sign an extension just yet, you probably have to move him.
Well, I'm going to play a very similar game that you play with Ethan in rapid fire here. Just a couple of those names you just mentioned, whether they're going to be on the move or not leading up to this season. And that's trade, buyout, whatever the case may be. Anders Lee, J.G. Pajot, Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, Ryan Pulock, Adam Pelech. Are they all back next year? And if not, who's not?
I think Anders Lee's back. I think the bio doesn't make a lot of sense. I think Brock Nelson stays. I don't know if they'll even be able to move Pajot. I think the dark horse for a move is Pelech or Pulock. I really do. Trying to get, whether it's 5.75 or 6.15, which is Pulock, Pelech is the lesser one. I don't know. For some reason, I think there's a chance that we don't see one of those two back. I think what happened is we have the Pelech injuries for sure, right? But I think it got to the point where Pulock's the better defensive defenseman at this point, which is not what you signed up for.
No, not what you thought, no.
Not that it's a problem that Pulock's become that, because the offense was never really there, but and I'm not even blaming Pelech for the steps back. The head injuries are, you got to take that seriously.
Just injuries in general, yeah.
I just think there may be a chance if the Islanders want to go and get a forward and that team needs a defenseman, that whether they retain Stout or not, I think I wouldn't be shocked to see a Pulock or a Pelech not on this team. But it's a dark horse move. I think if you're saying, are all these people back, it's more than likely. I think it's hard to move Pajot. Just because of face-offs. Sure, if that was the case, then where is everybody calling at the deadline? I know Arthur Staple just ran in his story. That team's called, and then Lou said no about trading Pajot.
Which is pretty interesting.
Which I think that tells you that they value him a lot more than we do. We throw his name around like he's definitely getting moved to that number one guy. But Lou and Wah might say we'd rather keep Pajot and might trade Nelson. So, yeah, I think if you're looking at the whole, I think it's more likely that everybody's back than one of those guys leaving. But I would definitely pay attention to the Islanders' back end for sure.
And does the goalie tandem remain the same?
We didn't bring it up, but the signing of Hogberg, which is what you were keying into. Good job there. They signed him to a 2-year deal, played in the Swedish Hockey League for the last 3 years, former Ottawa Senator. He had a .914 save percentage, 2.51 goals against average in 40 games. Everyone's saying, oh, this is Varley's replacement. This is your guy at the NHL level. This is a move to be made because the Islanders needed goaltending depth in Bridgeport. Ken Appleby is likely not to be back. Jakob Skark at this point is a failed prospect. Tykinen played really well last year. I think Skark has one more year left. I think he plays. But Hogberg's there in case Varley or Sorokin gets hurt. Well, you don't have to throw in someone who is such a question mark. That being said, though, at this upcoming deadline, if Sorokin finds his way back to being that guy in the first half, you probably got to consider moving Varley if you can get assets back for a team that needs goaltending. When you don't, if you're going to run Sorokin to the ground and be that Vasilevsky guy, and he's proven that he can handle it, you don't need Varley. I think Varley here is perfect for Sorokin, and the way he played last year, it's important to have a guy like that. But if Hogberg plays well to start the year in Bridgeport and could be your backup, he's a lot cheaper than a guy like Varley. We don't know the exact money here, but I guarantee it's 2 years at $1.5 million total. It's nothing crazy. This guy hasn't played. But I do think you have Varley and Sorokin as your tandem to start the year.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think Varlamov is going anywhere.
No, probably not.
I don't think he's going anywhere at the deadline. I think we saw a very good reason as to why he should stick around this year. But also, I think he's a guy who stays to keep Ilya Sorokin happy. I think he's a very close friend of his. They have a very good relationship. I think that's a boat you don't want to rock. And if this season's struggles for Sorokin were mental, I don't think taking Varlamov away from him is a good thing to do.
You struggle, so we're going to take your best friend away from you. That'll help your mental health.
Yeah, and not to say he's not a big boy, and he's not an adult who can deal with losing his friend going to another team. It happens all the time. Barzal's been fine without Anthony Beauvillier. But I just think that's kind of like something that Lou wants to keep harmonious. You know what I mean?
And if it's not an issue, it's not like Varley's a free agent now.
Right.
Which I think they're probably lucky about.
Yeah, I think the only argument can be made is that he's probably making more than he is making more than your typical backup would be, and he's a little older, right? Yeah. But you have $11 million for one goalie in some teams.
No,
right?
yeah, it's crazy.
So it's not the end of the world. Anyway, end of thought. I think those guys stick around, and I think we can go to what's on tap real quick. At the ready.
And now it's time for what's on tap. A look ahead at the Islanders' upcoming schedule.
Well, technically speaking, the Islanders don't have an upcoming schedule, but the NHL draft is coming next month, and that is June 28th and 29th at the Sphere in Las Vegas. Good old Sin City. And then after that, July 1st, of course, NHL free agency. So those are the big dates coming up for the New York Islanders. So we talked about the 18th pick briefly before. Are the Islanders making that pick this year?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
If they are going to stick to their words and they're focused on maybe upgrading the core and things like that, when you don't have the prospects to trade and you don't have cap to bring on, to eat cap, Your next best asset is your draft picks. Now, people are saying that, well, how can you make the farm team better if you keep trading it? We talked about it. Lou's not going to be here 6-7 years down the road, maybe 5, 4, 3 years down the road, right?
3 to 5? I don't know.
Let's say he's not here.
2 to 5?
He's worried on winning now. He's not. There's no
That's
way
the
he's
bottom
interested
line.
in
That's the bottom line.
First off, rebuild, and I'm definitely going to write a story. I wrote it last year. Rebuild has to be erased from every Islander fan's vocabulary. It is impossible. It is impossible unless you are trading Matthew Barzal, because that's part of your core. And also, too, is they're signing long-term. Him, Horvat, and Sorokin. Dobson's going to sign long-term. Is Dobson inking an 8x8 if Lou is going to go to them and say, by the way, we're blowing this entire thing up?
Right.
Absolutely not. So it's not happening. It's not possible. Fantasy-wise, sure, trade everybody. That's what you could do. The word is retool. That is the R word that you can use. That's legal in 2024. It's retool, not rebuild.
Okay. All right. So, I agree. I don't think the pick is going to be selected by the New York Islanders. I think it's going to go towards acquiring something. I think it's very clear. Listen, from Lou on down, the guys that they have committed 7-8 years going forward here, and the core that Ethan brought up before, they're not going anywhere. They're buying into that core. The question is just whether they can surround them underneath the cap to get a team that can compete. And yeah, sure, there's plenty of guys out there that don't believe that's the case, and maybe they can. It's very possible, but at the same time, they're going to try either way. That's the plan here. That's what they're going to do. So I agree. I think the 18th pick is going to be dealt unless Lou just can't find a dance partner. But I think
always find a dance partner. The question is the player in return. Like, my theory is that it's going to be a Romanov-esque deal. It's not going to, I know I mentioned Ehlers, which probably cost you the pick. I don't even think it would cost you. Holmstrom in a second or third might do it. Ehlers is halfway out the door, whatever the case may be. But it's going to be a player that's not on a lot of people's radars, that the Islanders have scouted heavily, that they like. Romanov, when he got dealt here, no one knew much about him besides that he hits people. Mm-hmm. There's much more to his game than that. And now if he could, take another step this past year, looking at a number one pairing guy with Dobson for the next 6, 7, 8 years. Romanov wasn't even a thought for anybody. So I think you'll probably see again this year, especially when the cap hit of these players like this young is not too high. Lou's going to go for a scouted player that nobody's talking about, trade the pick, and hope that it works short-term and long-term. Romanov is a big piece of the team now and will be for years to come. So I think that's more than likely, whether it's a forward, it could be another defenseman too. And you have Riley as your 7th guy. I think that's just, you're not going to get, if you're going for Gensel, the big names, or any of those guys, Gensel's a free agent, so never mind. The trade guys, it's probably going to have to be in play, but Lou's got to be smart about it. If you're bringing in a guy like that, you're going to have to clear cap, whereas drafting a guy like Romanov or a forward equivalent, you're not going to have to move a guy like Pajot to sign that guy probably.
Sure. And I have a feeling that we're going to be fielding questions regarding who the Islanders might look at as far as a trade and free agent. So why don't we bank those names? We'll go through them either way, but we'll bank those names for questions, Bruin, because I have a feeling that's going to come up. And instead, why don't we move on to the hero of the week? Ladies and gentlemen, when you hear this song, that means it's time for the hero of the week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels half-price hero, which this week is the wonderful, delicious Hockey Night in New York wrap, featuring grilled chicken, buffalo sauce, mozzarella, avocado in a wrap. It is wonderful. So we're doing hero of the year this time instead of hero of the week. Who we think is our biggest hero for the 2023-24 season for the New York Islanders. So Stefen, I will go to you here to start first. Who do you got?
Mine's Bo Horvat for a couple of reasons. Gets traded over last season, signs a long-term extension. There's a lot of pressure, especially how badly he played offensively when he came over, that this is going to have to be a huge year for him. And was it? 33 goals, 35 assists, 81 games. What he did for Barzal clearly helped Barzal hit career highs, but it was more of the leadership to us, especially in the media, when he talked to us. It was always about accountability.
Yeah.
Something that lacked under Lane Lambert, that even got even more powerful under Wow when you're hearing Horvat talk and things like that. So I think he was the offensive player that they expected. He was the defensive player they expected. Even when faceoffs weren't going great half of the year, he turned that up. He's big key to the power play when it was going. And just the leadership adding to the room, part of the core going forward. He had the year that he had to have to get Islander fans excited that, all right, Lou didn't make the wrong move going after him. That doesn't mean he's going to have a great year next year, but he had a huge year. And with all the pressure on him to have that huge year, he answered the call in pretty much every area.
I agree with you, and he essentially matched what he did last season, playing half of it or more than half of it in Vancouver. And there's a lot of people either on the island or even off the island. Once he gets to the island, his numbers are going to dip. His production's going to go down. That contract's going to look like an albatross. And the Islanders and Bo Horvat proved that theory wrong, where he came in and he was able to put up similar productive numbers here, and he looks like now a leader not only on the ice but in the locker room for this team. It looks like he's passionate about being on the island. He loves being an Islander. He's exuding a lot of leadership qualities that obviously were a big reason why he got the C in Vancouver. So I think he's a good selection for you, bud.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Sean Cuthbert, who is your hero?
My hero of the week is on the back end, and his name is Noah Dobson. 70-point season, 10 goals, 60 assists, plus 12, 25 power play points, all in 79 games played. This is the first time we've seen a defenseman of this caliber in this franchise since Dennis Potvin. You got to go back 3 to 4 decades since that has happened. So I think that's just a huge deal for this organization, where you got a cornerstone now on this team. Still young, 24, 25,
24,
whatever.
Yep.
There you go, 24 years old. And this is a guy who's going to be part of the foundation of this team in this next wave of leadership here. When you talk about the Horvats, the Barzals, the Dobsons, the Sorokins, the Romanovs, right? I mean, he's now a cornerstone of that. Yes, he got hurt a little bit there at the end. He tailed off a little bit there. Maybe, all those minutes that he logged this season finally caught up with him. We'll see. But bottom line is, he was a huge reason why this team had any sort of success this year and why they got into the playoffs. And he's a huge part of that offense. I know he kind of, flowed between the first and second power play units. Maybe that's something that still needs to be worked on there. But all in all, his defensive game, too, also stepped up big time as well. We were very concerned about that. Yep. I know we talked about it multiple times. Coming off those previous 50-point seasons, and his defensive game needed some work, and I think we saw it improve. Perfect, no, but definitely improved. So Noah Dobson is my hero of the year, and hopefully he can build off of it next year.
Yeah, great pick. Again, the complaining, which I know is notorious for most fan bases, but it's just people are complaining, and I get the anger at, the turnover behind the net that cost them a game, the struggles down the stretch. This guy is such a good player, and he's going to be a good player for this team going forward. You just have to stop complaining about it. Not every organization would kill to have a player like Noah Dobson ready to go. You're talking about a guy that you just said the point total that he had. And I think I did math. He had a stretch where he went 15 games without a goal. There was stretches where he wasn't close.
He was at a point or over a point per game pace for the majority of the season. It wasn't until he tailed off towards the end where he ends up with 70 and 79.
And again, when all those guys were hurt, when all those guys were hurt, he's playing not only on the penalty kill, he's playing on his offside. This kid had a lot going on this year. He does the injury. But when Lou says the sky's a limit, you could believe it or you want. When you have a 24-year-old defenseman, where defense is probably the hardest position translating from juniors or even whatever it is, it takes a long time. He's not in his prime yet, and he's still doing what he's doing.
Right, great point.
So.
And until he did tail off, he was in the Norris Trophy conversation essentially the entire season. So I think he's a huge asset for this organization. He's young, and I think he's only going to get better. But, Stefen, I know that Jake the Snake couldn't be here. There's no Snake Den tonight. But he did happen to tally all of the Hero of the Week votes.
Yes, he did.
And we got a little graph. So, Ed, a little early hello to you. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing good, fellas. How we doing?
Doing all right, man.
Well, the list is up here right now. You are no longer on camera. It is all of our heroes through the year. In third place, with 4 votes, is Anders Lee.
Okay.
In second is Mr. Bo Horvat.
All right.
And the first is, not shockingly, is Matt Barzal.
Okay.
With 7 votes.
7 votes.
Pretty much dominating it all.
Okay.
But yeah, people in chat, let us know who your heroes of the year were this year.
Absolutely. Chime in on that.
Chime in. I think Mel said was her hero of the year. I'm not sure if that's what she was alluding to.
Okay.
But I think
I considered using that name, but I figured guys who were here the whole year needed to get a little more credit. But he certainly is a big hero.
He's a big hero. Kyle McLean's a big hero.
Sure.
You're my hero.
Oh, you too, buddy.
Jay's my hero.
All right.
Ed's my hero.
Jay's everyone's hero.
All right, we're moving on.
But yes, good stuff from Jake to do the tally there. It's interesting if you go back 1 year, I bet Sorokin is in that top 3. I know he got nominated a lot last year. It wasn't his year this year.
Nope.
But I thought Kyle Palmieri might have had a couple more votes. He was probably right behind Anders Lee in that third place spot. But I guess, you look at the top there, Matt Barzal, he's probably the guy who's supposed to be there, right?
He's the face of the franchise. He better
There
be
you
there.
go.
Right? You're in a lot of trouble if he's not.
So there's your season-ending heroes of the year. And remember, folks, you can stop in to Blue Line Deli Huntington location, mention Hockey Night New York, and get half off the Hockey Night in New York wrap. So why don't you tell us a little something about our pals?
Yeah, let me tell you about Isles Fix.
Yeah.
Islanders country, get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the only Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at islesfix.substack.com.
There you have it. And now it's time
for Questions Brewing.
It's time for Questions Brewing. So go ahead. Ask us a question.
Yeah.
That's right. Fun times here at Hockey Night in New York. So how are we doing behind the screens there, Ed and Jason?
We have a lot of great questions today.
Is that right? But no, I want to know if you guys are doing all right. How's Jay?
Oh, it remains a mystery this day.
Okay, we got a thumbs up.
Yeah.
You know, he participated last week, or last show, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the
great Yeti cups here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, wonderful.
I've been using that.
Me too. It's a great cup.
You couldn't have a better
Keeps
debut
refreshments
to
hot at
speaking than giving us presents
Yeah, try to do more often.
live. Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, really
All right.
appreciate it.
So what we got going on in the chat?
Anyway, we'll start off with DTMR.
Hello there.
729 to be specific.
Okay.
He says, "How about we bring back Doug Waite to run the power play?"
Well, I did not see that coming.
No.
How about not? I don't think that's going to happen. Interesting.
Why not, Sean?
Why not? Well, for one, he was fired by Lou Lamoriello, so I don't think he's going to be rehired by Lou.
Yeah.
What is Doug Waite doing these days?
He was an assistant with the San Jose Sharks, and then he was a vice president, or he was a special assistant to the GM. No, the answer is no.
Yeah, all right.
I think Dougie Hockey's dead and gone, but kudos for the out of left field question. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
one
I thought it was a good question. Next up from Troutier, we talked a bit about this before. Minor tweaks or a total rebuild, but he asks, total rebuild or minor tweaks over the summer? Canes smoked by the New York Rangers shows just how far away the Islanders were to being a playoff team.
Well, I don't think it shows how far they are from being a playoff team. Cup contender, which the Rangers seem to definitely be. It's funny, Ethan.
They seem destined.
I also don't think the Canes are getting smoked. See,
yeah.
Yes, at the end of the day, the results are the results. The Islanders lost 4 out of 5 games. The Hurricanes have lost 3 out of 3. So I get the smoked narrative there, but as even Rod Brindamore so keenly pointed out in his press conference after Game 3,
Yeah.
all 1-goal games. And I think that was even a graphic last night on TNT. They talked about that. I think it was their last 7 or 8 losses in the playoffs were all by a goal. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to win. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But again, it's not like these games have been tilted on the ice. And funny, the one game we talked about earlier, Game 5, is sometimes literally bounces are the reasons why these games go one way or another. Now, that being said, I'm not here to tell you that the Islanders are level with the Canes or the Rangers. They're not. We know that. But I also don't think they're as far away as maybe Troutier 19 thinks, right? And I think just based on what we said before, no chance of a rebuild. We're going to see some kind of retool here. This team is going to try, as they might, to improve this team to get them to be not only a at least regular playoff caliber team, but get back to that potential Stanley Cup contention. And that's really going to be the big question this summer is we already know what Lou's intentions are.
Yep.
We know that he wants to make this team better. We know that he wants them to be a cup contender. The question is whether he actually has the ability to do it. Navigating the cap, navigating the contracts, the movement clauses, all of that stuff, and whether he can bring in the guys that are going to get them there. And that's pretty much where we're at. So we're probably looking at another repeat of the last 2 years, unless Wah can really work some magic. If he can get the special teams going, it could be a completely different story.
Yeah, imagine that.
I mean, the fact that they got as far as they did despite their special teams, particularly the PK
in the league,
is kind of telling. And if they can just figure out a way to get that going, and I meant to touch on this with you, is, maybe some of the biggest moves that the Islanders can make this summer are their coaching staff.
Yeah.
And moving out Doug Huda, maybe even John McClain. I don't think Huda's back. I don't think
with
he's back.
Benoit being hired to come on.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not the same exact coach in what they do, but
Right.
yeah, if Huda goes into the office with Lou and Lou says, "Tell me why you should stay,"
Right.
what can Huda say? The defense was terrible. The PK was terrible, and it's not the
Right.
coach's fault for everything. I don't think anyone should be blaming Huda.
Sure. The players in the ice got to execute.
But if you're going in and saying, what did you do right this year? Tell me where we excel with you here. There's nothing really to say.
And it may not even come to that. Lou just might say, hey, listen, Doug, thank you for your service. If Patty wants to bring his own guys.
Yeah, no,
because
1,000%.
most coaches do.
Yep.
So, but those could end up being the biggest subtle moves that they can make is just staff that can get these special teams going. And we seem to be having this conversation every year, regardless of who's behind the bench, going back to pre-Barry Trotz and now, post-Barry Trotz. But if they can even just average them out, balance them out, we might be talking about another 10 to 12 points in the standings and a better matchup in the first round, and then anything can happen from there. And surprise, surprise, long-winded answer to a short question is, they're gonna retool the squad, and a rebuild is so far from the conversation. It's not even there.
Good story. I'm going to bank that. That's a good story idea about the coaching. I mean, we talked a couple of years ago after Lane's first year, I definitely came on this show and I said, Lane wasn't great in his first year, but he needed so much more from the coaching staff around him. The power play was terrible that year. The penalty kill struggle. Like, he needed more support. That really could be the biggest thing this summer is Wah got the certain players to buy in. Get people to buy into your power play scheme. Get players to buy into the PK, because there are times you could tell where players just either didn't grasp what was being asked of them on special teams, or they didn't care to grasp what it was.
Sure.
Sure.
Next up from CGS 878. Would ownership and or management ever ask Barzal what he wants in, quote, his team for next season and beyond?
I think they definitely talked to the players about, well, first off, Horvat made it public what he wants. He was asked about the different line mates, and he said...
That surprised me.
And he said, he goes, listen, we love playing with Cizikas, but essentially said, but Cizikas is a fourth-line player,
right.
And we had a revolving door of linemen. So, if Lou can add, that's great. He goes, my job is to do X, Y, and Z, and just hope. I think you said hope, or, you just expect the GM to make the right moves or whatever it was. But it was clearly get me a player to play with, get us another top 6 winger, because I think that's what we need, is essentially what Horvat said without being as direct.
And I just kind of wonder if Lou appreciated that.
Probably not.
Right. I just feel like that's a quote you don't typically see from a player, where even if that's what they're thinking, they're probably not saying it public. So I don't know.
But now you can't avoid it. It's been public. Like I know when Trotz was here, he kept saying that he wanted a winger, and it was more rumored that he said that to Lou, even though he had said in press conference like, "Hey, we need another," whatever it was.
Sure.
But when your player that you sign long term is voicing a displeasure with something, that has to resonate. Like, you have no choice. Now you can't. Now, Lou could have said, listen, I don't appreciate you saying that. Horvat might have said, I was asked a question, I didn't think much about it.
Yeah.
But it's obvious. You can't run Cizikas up there on the top line. If the team wants to take the steps forward, you can't be trying players throughout the year in different spots. You got to get bona fide players to play in certain spots.
And I guess the answer is yes, just because they have exit interviews at the end of the season, and these are just things that come up. Now, how much they're weighing, Barzal's input on, I think we should get a guy like this or a guy like that, that's another question. But at the very least, sure, they'll take the input.
But the players also to Wah, and then Wah to Lou. Wah to Lou is going to hold more weight than the players, because players might want X, Y, and Z, and Wah says, we don't need X and Y. We just need Z, and Z is what they're going to focus on. So,
yeah. All right. Next up from Mr. Tom Boyle, who made it despite being at a party today.
All right.
Yeah. Tom finds a way.
I love it. What's up, Tom?
Call that resiliency.
Yeah.
Nice.
Stefen, you mentioned Jeffries in passing earlier, but he said, do you see Jeffries making the team out of camp next year?
I don't see him making the team, but I do think that he'll put up a fight for them, thinking like McLean this year. McLean was on fire at training camp where he stood out. You're saying, who is this kid?
Yeah.
He doesn't start the year on the roster, but you said, all right, when they need a call up, this is this guy that's probably going to be there. I think Jeffries has a chance to come in. It'll be his first camp with the Islanders. Show, okay, if we need someone like this is a guy we should definitely be watching early in Bridgeport's year, because if we need to call up, this is a guy. But no, I don't think so, unless he has a camp where you have no choice, where he just did everything he needed to do. He played well with Horvat and Barzal, played well with Nelson and Palmieri, and that's the guy. But I do think he'll start in Bridgeport and be one of those first or second call-ups if need be.
All right. Next up from DTMR. Does Lou trade the first-round pick for a player?
Yes, he does. And I guess now we can kind of consider who he might do that for.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have a list.
Ehlers
right?
was mentioned before. I know you got some other names there.
I mean, it's obviously a pipeline. I don't know if it's a pipeline. Mitch Marner, if you're trying to get him from Toronto, that pick is definitely going there. Buchnevich has another year on his deal, I believe. That's another guy. Yegor Sharangovich, I don't believe he's a trade acquisition. I like him a lot. Not a guy that you particularly think about because he's.
Sure.
But Sharangovich, Chikrin, Clayton Keller, who's signed through 2027-28. Rossi, a young centerman, 21 goals, 19 assists in his first full season. He's a pending RFA you'd have to trade for. I believe Marty Nietzsche is a free agent, so you wouldn't have to trade for him. But did you have any names?
Well, do you think Keller's a guy who would still be on the table after the change in location here?
Well, the question is, does he want to be in Utah? He's going to say all the right things for sure. And I think if Phoenix still was a team, it's more likely. I think Clayton Keller's a perfect fit on that top line if you get it to happen. But given how everyone seemed to love Utah, he might just want to stay and be like, I want to be part of this.
I have a feeling it's going to go more in that direction. But no, I mean, that pretty much covers the trade-wise the names I'd look at. We'll look at free agents later. But no, I think all of those are names that could help. And I think most of those names is, you'd probably be looking at the first rounder being involved. And there's always guys who you don't know are available that end up available. Bo Horvat ended up a New York Islander, where if they were getting anybody from Vancouver, we thought it was going to be Miller, right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it was Bo Horvat. So there could be some guys being dangled out there that we're not even familiar with. But yeah, I would say that first round pick would be very surprising to me if it's made.
Unless they trade Nelson and get a first back. Now you have a first to pick.
Yeah, there's other ways to shuffle the deck a little bit, but I think if Lou has a first round pick in his pocket, it's probably going elsewhere.
I agree.
Yeah.
Interesting question from Isles72.
Yeah.
Do you think the Isles team culture has too much of the country club / uncle's club feel?
I think that gets so blown out. I mean, I get the country club in terms of the accountability not being there, just having fun with each other. But if you're in the room or you're actually watched, these guys care so much. It's not like they're just, we're fine, barely making it. And I know the quotes after getting eliminated is not what fans want to hear. Well, we made the playoffs. No one thought about this. We still believe. First off, what do you expect them to say after getting a loss? They're going to say the cliches. But I think the culture has changed even under Wah over the last couple of months, where maybe there was a little bit of country club with Lane there because the accountability. To me, the biggest thing is accountability. If players aren't being held accountable, it gives off that country club vibe. But since Wah came in, the accountability in the room from him, from the players, even the depth players, like everyone was locked in, accountable with even when they won games, they were being accountable. So I think the culture even changed under Wah. But I think this whole country club, the guys want to win. It's not that they're just here for shits and giggles.
It's easy to pick lazy narratives as to why or why not something is going your way or not, right? And I think that's one of them. I mean, again, I'm not there to say for sure one way or the other, but just to start, Lou Lamoriello would not allow a country club atmosphere. And if Lane Lambert was contributing to a potential country club atmosphere, that's why he's no longer coaching this team. Because Lou doesn't allow, I mean, for crying out loud, the guy doesn't allow facial hair on the team, right? Yeah. He's always kind of insisting on a very professional environment, from just the way you look, the way you handle yourself, all that, all on down, right? So I just don't even think that's something that Lou would have patience for. And I think if there were elements of the locker room that were, kind of stirring that sort of atmosphere within, he would get rid of that element, whoever that might be, right? I just don't think that's something he would allow. And I also think that the way this team fought back at the end of the year to claw their way into the playoffs is a sign that they're not just taking nights off, right? That it's not a country club atmosphere. They could have just packed it in. They could have just said, let's have a nice extra summer here. Yeah. Let's get another couple of weeks or whatever it is, right? But they fought back and they earned a playoff spot, fell short in the playoffs. But I don't think that's the way it's going. And if there is any element to that, those are probably the sorts of guys that we don't see back next season.
1,000%.
Next from Charlie Cohen on YouTube, he asks, is there a chance that Lou re-signs Zach Parise?
No, because Zach Parise already said this was it for him. So whether he wins the Cup with Colorado or they get eliminated, Zach already said this was it for him. So no.
There you go.
No.
Quick and easy.
Yeah. It's rare from you two. It really is.
It's true. We own it. It's true.
Next up from Trottier19. Do you agree that this was the most frustrating playoff since 1994? I was only 2, so I cannot attest for that. And Stefen?
Well, I was dead or alive. I'm not alive. What? I mean, I wasn't alive, so I was dead, right?
Outplayed them in game 1 and lost blew a 3-goal lead in the game in game 2 and lost. Sorokin craps to bed in game 3 and lost.
It's a question for Sean.
Ah,
Yeah, it's
jeez.
really a
yeah,
question
right.
for
Like
you.
now I'm like the cobwebs are coming off my brain cells to try to remember past playoff series, right? I mean, this was a frustrating one. I mean, last year was frustrating too. I feel like well, the most frustrating game was game 7 against the Bolts a couple of years ago.
Yep.
I mean, and you know what else? There was another very frustrating game 7 was the year against the Caps in 15.
Well, that was the 8-0. Was that the 8-0 game?
No. That was a 2-1 loss against
yeah.
the Caps in Game 7 in DC. Because you know what it was? It was that team's first taste of a Game 7 in the playoffs. That was when like Tavares, Oposo, even Grabner, I think at the time, they were all young. They hadn't experienced the Game 7 yet, and they just played scared. The only guy that showed up in that game was Jaro Halak, and he kept them in that. He was outstanding that game. But anyway, most disappointing, was that the question? Frustrating playoff series. Let's give it a top 3. I don't know for sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of that Sabres series in the Ted Nolan year. I remember there was some like disallowed goals for the Islanders that didn't go their way.
What about the series when they ended up playing Vaucoon in the playoffs and?
Oh, the Penguins. That was the Penguins series. That was
when
Nabokov.
Nabokov dropped down and Orpik's shot beat him over the shoulder, and I was just like, just stand up.
Right.
I forgot how many games that was. I don't know if it was too close of a series, but that was a frustrating. Like, you're right there. I think
that was every time somebody talked about that playoff series in the summer, the Islanders gave the Penguins all they could handle.
Yeah.
That was the tagline, because they weren't expected to be. They went a crazy run to end. It was a shortened season. They went a crazy run to get in, and then I don't know.
I think they're all frustrating.
I don't know. Yeah, they haven't won, so it's all frustrating.
RJack23 asks, what are we hearing about the Isles signing Alex Lundgrens, right?
Yeah.
I think that's how you say it.
Yeah.
They lose his rights in August, I believe.
So I've not heard much about him at all. That you mentioned him, actually. I haven't heard a thing about him. They lose his rights. I believe it's in August. I think August 15th is the day after. I haven't heard a word about him, so that's a good question. I believe he's a winger. Really have nothing to say on that because I haven't heard a thing about it, which probably means probably not.
I have even less to say about it because I'm not even familiar with the name. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
So
topic for another day.
Sorry, we couldn't be more informative on that front.
A lot of names out there. Next question from Mike. Do you think Kyle is coming back at all is tied to his dad coming back to coach?
No.
No.
I saw someone else actually ask this also. And one, I don't think McLean is going to be back to coach. And I mean, Kyle found a home here and to be a regular here.
Right.
And I think they'll have no issues getting him to a contract. His dad would even say, hey, I'm not coming back. You should not move at all. Like, you don't go another 2 and have to prove yourself again, especially like we saw with Fashing. He had a really good year, got the contract, and we talked to Fashing afterwards, and he didn't like the way he played this year, and he thought, he had a really tough time. That could happen for a guy like McLean next year. And if he goes to a different team where he doesn't fit their system, like on a really good team, McLean's not in the lineup probably, but he has a role with the Islanders.
Right.
Whether it's a third-line center role if Pajot's gone or that fourth-line center role or whatever it is, he knows the team here. He felt comfortable here. For whatever reason, he produced here. He has the energy here. I don't think there's any relation to whether his dad's here or not with him being here at all.
I don't think so at all.
Well, before we wrap up questions, we have questions for you. Jake the Snake has put up some trivia questions.
Look at this guy. He finds a way to be here without being here.
He's doing more when he's not here than he was. Kidding.
Oh.
Kidding.
Wow.
Damn. Shots fired.
And the man's not even here to defend himself.
Unbelievable.
That is crazy.
He's having fun somewhere else.
Anyway, so Anywho, we had 3 guests in the studio this year who participated in Hero of the Week.
Okay.
And you named who they picked. Starting off with our first guest was Thomas Hickey on October 29th. Who was Thomas Hickey's Hero of the Week?
All right, who was playing well around
the beginning of the
season?
That's like 2 weeks in, I think. Right?
Yeah.
The season started like mid-October. So who would have been a hero back then? I'm just going to throw a guess out there and say Bo Horvat.
I'm saying Matthew Barzal.
Both incorrect.
Who was
Noah
it?
Dobson?
No.
All right, who was it?
The answer is Semyon Varlamov was his Hero of the Week.
Okay.
So Semyon must have had some lights-out saves.
Yeah, he must have had a start or two that week. Okay.
That was before Sorokin.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
The second guest who was in studio was Ethan Sears on January 21st at Blue Line Deli. Who did he pick as his hero?
January 21st. That was the Patrick Waugh show. That was after they just...
It was in person. Ethan was there in person.
Yes,
right?
he sat down with us at the deli.
Yes.
And that was
all
just
all
after
these questions are guests we had on the show.
That was after Waugh was just hired. So, I mean, he might have said Lou Lamoriello for the hiring of Patrick Waugh. I think I probably
said
did that.
that
We both might have said that.
That week. That was a tough week for the Islanders.
Well, they fired their coach.
No, in terms of playing. Like, that bad Minnesota game, that
Chicago game, right?
So you have to narrow it down. It probably wasn't a player, right? If they had a bad week. Sean, you were pretty on the money.
It was Lou?
It was just Patrick Waugh.
You know what? That rings a bell. I remember that.
Didn't do anything yet for the organization.
He was a hero because he said, all right, Lou, I'll work for you.
I'll come aboard.
I'll coach the team, yeah.
And the last guest was Mike Carver on St. Patty's Day at RJ Daniels. Who did he pick?
Oh, man.
So they had not played the game yet because I called into the show. So it couldn't have been anyone in that game, which they lost.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And I know he had a lot of
this was a rough week.
Anti-heroes that day. He went off on some tangents that day, if I remember correctly. Oh, man. Who was his hero?
Was it Palmieri?
No.
I'm going to go with, I don't know. I'm going to go with Barzell.
It's a terrible show. Terrible game show.
I just have bad memories.
Yeah. Who was it, Ed?
It was nobody. Nobody deserved it.
That sounds right.
You're sick.
It's funny. Once you tell me, it like flashes back
anti-hero.
the memory of, yeah, that makes sense. Nobody was his hero of the week.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
And next little trivia question for you guys.
Yeah.
This first part is for you, Sean. Sean, can you name the player that you picked the most as your hero of the week? And can you guess how many times you picked them?
I'm going to go with... I'm going to go with Palmieri. And I'm going to say it can't be more than 3 because he would have been in that list maybe. So I'm going to say Palmieri 3 times.
Palmieri 3 times is incorrect.
Varlamov 3 times?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I could see why.
Was it Horvat for him?
It was. Fun fact.
Was it 3 times?
It was 5. Five times. You are the reason he's on that list. Okay. Fun fact, Stefen, you never picked Horvat this season.
I like to go below.
You think I would remember that at least a little bit?
Yeah.
That
I mean,
awful.
there was a good stretch of weeks where Palmieri was like the hero for everybody.
Well, that was
week.
like recency bias. Like I definitely picked him in recent weeks, so I figured over the course of the season,
I
went with more. But okay, Bo Horvat. Sorry, Bo.
Yeah. Now, and Stefen, it's your turn. Stefen, can you name the player that you picked the most as your hero of the week, and can you guess how many times you picked them?
God, I always go like under the radar ones.
Yeah, you literally pick inanimate objects.
You think that?
Yeah, I think
the stats say otherwise here.
Was it Barzal?
It's Barzal. Not under the radar at all.
Is it 4 times?
4 times is correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you guys did great.
So you never picked Horvat, and I never picked Barzal?
We probably talked before the show that we weren't going to pick the same. So it probably always
give away our secrets.
Oh, it's not.
Jeez.
You gotta have the graphics up there. They know.
Yeah, well, but you didn't see them. You couldn't see them.
That's true.
But there's a bonus question.
Okay.
There was actually another player who received 4 total hero votes this season, but they all came early in the season. Can you name who this player is?
Early in the season?
I mean, I feel like
Dobson.
I'm thinking it's got to be Dobson or Sorokin. Yeah.
No.
Was Dobson
neither one?
It's neither one.
I mean, you like no.
Wasn't.
Who else could it be?
Was it Brock?
That's got to be Brock.
No,
what?
Nope.
It wasn't Pierre Engvall.
Well, it was definitely not. It was.
This could go back to last year a little bit, but I know you've had a penchant for picking Hudson Fasching a lot.
It wasn't Hudson Fasching.
You're within the realm now.
Oh, so it's depth.
I mean, yeah. I mean, sure, but
I don't think it wouldn't have been Pajot.
No. It's
who else is left?
It's a young gun.
Simon Holmstrom?
Yes.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
You know what?
Yes,
it was.
Oh, he had all the short-handed goals.
Yeah, and then he have like 15 goals in the first half of the season, and then just disappeared.
He led the NHL in short-handed goals.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I recall some back-to-backs. Yeah, that wasn't him and Pajot where The what was it? The best shorthanded duo since Captain Hook and Shmi.
Yeah. Nice to reflect back like that, huh?
Yeah, it
And
just
being
goes
like,
to show
wow.
what a long season it is.
Yeah.
A lot can
80
change.
It was a long, that up
Long
and down
82
season
games.
roller coaster.
It
ebbs
sure
and
was.
flows.
Yeah.
It sure was.
But that's it for the trivia. You guys pretty much nailed it.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
we definitely did a bad job.
That was not good.
We
at
did
all.
an awful job.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, and look, we're probably gonna take a little time off here unless there's some news. We'll definitely cover the draft. We'll definitely cover free agency. We'll cover free agency more in depth when we go over the draft, I think. I mean, we can, just because I don't want to go end the show without naming the names, because I'm sure people want to know who we think they might be looking at. So let's just quickly give these names and anybody, your guess is as good as mine as who they end up going after or picking up. But I mean, you made a great list. You had Tyler Bertuzzi, Marchessault, DeBrusque, Duclair, Joshua, Brady Shea, Pesci, who have been mentioned before. Kind of goes back to my point when we were talking to Ethan about, I don't think there's one guy this year that the Islanders have to key in and be like, oh man, if they get him, great, and if they don't, the sky is falling, right? I think you look at a couple of those names there, particularly on the forward end of things, and if they can get one or two of those guys to plug in on your top six, I think that changes the game there a little bit. It totally changes the dynamic. It puts guys where they're supposed to be towards the bottom of the lineup, where you're not considering a Hudson Fasching or a Simon Holmstrom who may still not be ready for a top six role, if ever. But at least they can plug in on that bottom six and replace the Martins and the Clutterbucks that most people want to see replaced anyway, right? So I think you can do a lot worse than bringing in a DeBrusque, or I'd love to see Duclair. He might cash in, but
I was just going to say Duclair was the guy that I spoke so much about at the deadline. Unless him and Watt hate each other, I think it's perfect. He's a middle six guy that can play on either your top line or your second line. That's what it's going to be. If they don't go and get the superstar, which they're probably not going to get,
right,
they're going to be plugging holes. But like you say, you're plugging holes with middle six guys, not fringe NHL starters.
Yeah, and guys that can put up 40, 50 points, be complimentary. I mean, you want the speed. Exactly. You want guys that can hang with Barzal and Horvat, guys that can hang with Nelson and probably Palmieri there on the second line, and guys that can just, bring another dynamic to this team that can maybe also just help out on special teams, help out on the penalty kill, right? The pie in the sky names are Gensel, Reinhart. They're, Gensel's probably going elsewhere. Reinhart's probably staying with Florida. Stamkos, older now, but could he help? Of course, but I don't think he ends up on the island anyway. Some other names, Mantha, Teravainen, Tarasenko, a name that we seem to speak of every summer. Gostisbehere, maybe. He's a puck mover there. He could do worse than bringing him, on the left side there. Hronek probably stays in Vancouver. He's been outstanding there, and he's going to cost a lot of money. So there's a lot of names. I think the good thing is there's a lot of options.
Well, last year, people signed the one-year deal because the cap was flat and then it goes up.
Matt Duchene was one of those guys. I don't know how his name didn't end up here.
A lot of guys took the one-year deal because they knew that they could cash in. And now some obviously didn't have great years, and that'll impact that. But there's a lot of free agents this year that you could, again, you're just plugging in to roles where it's an upgrade. Whether it's a middle six guy that you're putting in a top six, sure, I get people complaining. But you're getting better when you're putting in stable NHL players that have proven it as middle six guys, whereas, again, Hudson Fasching and guys like that, solid players, but should not be playing above a third line.
Right, and I don't know who the Islanders on that list have a better chance of getting than another. Obviously, there's going to be some different dollar figures. They're all relatively in that mid to late 20 age, 27, 28, 29, with a couple of exceptions. Again, you can do a lot worse, and because we seem to know that this is a team that's going to be trying to compete, would it be ideal to get a 24-year-old, a 23-year-old? Sure, but that's going to be harder via trade. It's going to cost you more assets. The point is, the Islanders definitely have options to improve this team for next year and to be more of a contender. It's just a matter if they can actually follow through and make them happen.
Perfect way to end it. Huh?
So with that, we're going to wrap this. Oh, what's that, Jay? You got something there?
It's us in the Herald.
Yes. Hockey Night in New York did end up in the Long Island Herald, the Rockville Center and Lynbrook East Rockaway editions. I believe the Belmore edition as well, because that's where you grew up there, right, pal?
I did. Grew up in Belmore.
So, Jay was nice enough to make a little connect and Dan, nice guy Dan from Long Island Herald, came over here, gave us a little interview, and wrote up a nice little piece on the Herald, and we really appreciate it. We appreciate it, Jay.
Awesome.
We appreciate it, Dan, and we appreciate it, Long Island Herald. So if you haven't checked it out yet, check it out. It's online. It's in paper there. I think the Belmore and the East Rockaway editions are still running this week, so you can pick them up at your local 7-Eleven, Stop and Shop, one of those types of shops, right? Yeah, sure. So, Long Island Herald, awesome stuff. Yeah.
Good way to end the year.
Give it a read. Yeah, good way to end the year. So, Ed, cue that music. All right, folks, want to thank you all for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and on Facebook and Twitter and all those other places. YouTube. Also want to thank Ethan Sears of the New York Post for joining us today. Also, always a outstanding interview from him. And listen, guys, just really appreciate you guys tuning in all year. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great having Stefen here next to me all year. Can't say enough about him and the job that himself, Ed, Jake, and Jay have done here with the show. It's been an absolute blast doing the show here at Florida Media. We're looking forward to doing more over the summer to cover the draft and free agency, whatever else might happen. And, of course, going into next season, going to get bigger and better here at Hockey Night New York. So we can't thank you guys enough. And also, Ava Salty doing the writing thing for us up in Boston. She's been great, too, adding to the website. So a big hat tip to her for helping us out on the writing end. And, guys, just thanks so much for tuning in and also coming in live on the chat. It's just great to see you guys there and joining in on what we have to say here on the show and asking us questions and stuff. It makes it that much more fun. We really appreciate it. And, so a big thanks to all of you and, of course, our great sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Iceland. Remember to check out their menu at BlueLineDeli.com and also to order online. Also, big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Find out how to unplug your game at mainstboardgamecafe.com. And also a huge thanks to Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law. Nobody likes going to court, but if you have to, call 516-742-7600 for a free consultation. And folks, remember to rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word. And of course, Stefen, where can we find you on the internet?
Find me on Twitter or X at Stefen_Rosner, STEFEN_ROSNER. Hockey News, NHL.com, and we'll see what else comes about this summer. You never know.
Indeed. You can find myself on Twitter at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow the show at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, everywhere and anywhere. So with all of that out of the way, we've been Hockey Night New York for Stefen, Ed, for Jay, and for Jake the Snake Party and somewhere afar. We've been Hockey Night New York. Have a great summer, folks.